One of the really fun things about this podcast is that I get to meet all these different people who are walking similar paths to me. That is, people who are exploring and promoting creativity. And all these people just come out of the woodwork. And it's really great because it's kind of like finding your people, the ones who just get you. And today, my guest is one of those people. He's on a mission to help people find and live a more creative life. And he's pretty much written a guide on how to do this, which I'm very keen to unpack. So, hello and welcome to Creativity Uncovered. My name is Abi Gatling, and I am on a journey to uncover how everyday people find inspiration, get inventive, and open their imagination. Basically, I want to know how people find creative solutions and then how they use them at home, at work, at play, and everything in between. And my goal for this podcast is that by the end of it, you will be armed with a whole suite of tried and tested ways to summon creativity the next time you need it. So today, I'm very excited to be welcoming Gregg Stewart to the podcast. Welcome.
Hi, how are you, Abby?
Good. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation all week. So
yes, me too. Because we did speak a couple of weeks back, and I said to you at the time, I have so many more questions for you, but I want to keep them for the podcast. And now is my opportunity. So thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you.
So, Gregg, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is that you have a book coming out that is so down my alley, and I think it'll be so well aligned with this podcast that I wanted to reach out and talk to you about it. So your book is called Let It Out, and tell me a little bit about it.
Sure. So Let It Out really is in many ways a culmination of the life I've endeavored to lead for the past few decades. Is really just as I had moved I grew up in New Jersey and then moved to Southern California to attend art college. And I wasn't really prepared to be at university as an artist. I loved drawing, but the university approach kind of sucked the life out of all the creativity, and I dropped out after only a couple semesters. But my creativity kind of still was relentless within me, the wanting to express myself and engage with my creativity. And so it kind of transformed a bit. And I ended up within 2 years, I had my first publishing deal as a staff songwriter with EMI, and then soon had a record deal. And then from there started my own record label. And through most of my 20s was a touring musician, not only with my band, but with other bands. I started writing articles as a journalist. I started writing short stories after that, writing songs for other artists. And my creativity just kept morphing on me as certain aspects of one creative endeavor would kind of wind down. It would metamorphosize into something else until I find myself now having walked the walk of being a touring musician and a journalist and a short story writer and a novelist and a screenwriter and and an artist and even and so getting into all of those things really gave me a frame of reference to really explore what is creativity about, that there's many avenues to kind of explore your creativity. But for me, it's really about what I discover about myself. Where it goes is almost none of my business. And where the journey takes me is always a learning opportunity, not necessarily an arrival state. And I feel like so much of this book really came out of those lived in experiences and then culminated really with my father's passing and being with him towards the very end of his life and him saying, I wish I wrote a book. I could have written a book. And he could have written a book. He was a brilliant man and he lived a great life. And I'm grateful I had that time with him to say goodbye and all of these things. But at the same time, it really got me thinking, how many people are going to die with a book still inside of them, or with a poem they never wrote, or their memoirs to their grandchildren, or, a love song for their spouse of 30, 40, 50 years, right? The thing inside you that you kind of made time for everything else except for what was really in your soul. And I kind of say engaging with your creativity is really the soul's medicine. It's a way in which you learn about what's really going on inside of you. And so that's really what the book was about. And it's called Let It Out. And the whole subline, the subtitle is Unlocking Creativity to Access Authentic Expression. Like it's you're engaging with your creativity is one of the most amazing ways to really find your authentic voice and what's really going on inside of you. And a way to feel more, through engaging with your creativity, a way to feel more comfortable in your own skin. I know I'm saying a lot all at once, aren't I?
Yeah.
I'm definitely passionate about this. You can tell. Can you tell?
Just a little bit. I can tell you like it a little bit.
Yeah.
And wow, so many things there. And I love the fact that, yes, like you had this like evolving creativity and just kind of going down all these pathways. But what intrigued me was that, like, what was it about university that kind of stifled that creativity? What do you think of that? Was that just putting you in a box, or like what was that all about?
Yeah, well, no, that's great. I mean, I think one of the major things that happens, I think, in a school environment is you learn craft, and a craft, I think, is a really important thing, but it should not come at the expense of just self-expression. And I realized that for me and my art, I really wanted to escape into it and have fun with it. And the moment I had to really do it for a grade and have the craft, I just don't know that I had the emotional maturity at that point, to be honest, really, that I realized it just sucked the life out of it for me. And I really found myself with a lot of professors who weren't really fostering going there, like not really fostering a state of, they didn't really want to be surprised by their students. I think that's really the fundamental thing. They wanted to train you how to be the artist that they saw you to be, to get you jobs and get you work. And that's fair to be coming from that place. But then there's also something to be said for the kind of facilitator, mentor who really wants to be surprised by your work, to say, where are you pushing the envelope? Where are you not being vulnerable enough or courageous enough? I want to see more of that in your work. I want you to be scared to put up your piece. I don't want you to just check all the boxes and put up work that's safe. There's a time and place for doing the job, and I've worked in a creative director role for as a consultant for a few different companies, and there's a time where you just have to fulfill what the client is asking for. But that's not necessarily what is going to necessarily light you up. And finding that balance, I think, is really important as an artist, as a creative.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think, I mean, just from my own experience from schooling and creativity together, is that they're kind of juxtaposed, I suppose, because schooling is all about standardization and marking everyone against the same criteria, and then so much of creativity is that self-expression, as you said, and that can come out in so many multitude of ways. It kind of almost is at odds with the schooling system a little bit. But I think that's really interesting that you mentioned that, is because, like you said before about creativity and your book, Let It Out, it's all about that full expression of your creativity, and you're already feeling that back at university. So it's kind of like that was the starting point that ultimately led to this book coming out.
It really did. Yeah. Thanks for noting that. Yeah, and I think it's really part of that whole journey. And really, I've just become, I think, one of those advocates. In some ways, I think we all somehow become the person we wish we had when we were younger. And I feel like me, in my consulting work and the workshops that I run now, is trying to be that professor that I wanted when I first ended up at university, the one that just really has no agenda other than, I want you to go for it. I am right there cheering, like a loving parent cheering for you on the sidelines while you're on the court of your life, And then sometimes to be that drill sergeant when I see you, over procrastinating or talking yourself out of your creativity, and then I blow my whistle at you. But it's all, that's what I love. I love fostering, and supporting people to find their creative voice, and not from a place of necessarily having to be professional at it. I think too often we distill the creative experience down to just commerce and content. And I don't think that's what creativity is really all about. I don't think that's the biggest lesson we can get from creativity is it successful? It's kind of like I say, you don't have to be a professional athlete or a bodybuilder to go to the gym. Like, you understand that this is good for your health to move your body and go to the gym. You don't, in the same way, you can engage with your creativity without having to be a professional, artist or musician or screenwriter or novelist. It's just something you get to do for you because you're on the discovery of who you really are through your that creative act.
Yes, so true. And you mentioned before that it's about the journey, not necessarily the end product or the end destination.
Right.
But then, the catalyst for you actually writing this book was your father's passing.
Definitely.
Was that something you felt like the book was going to be part of that journey? Because it does seem like it is like this end product for you. Or was it still an exploration for you?
Oh, that's really great. I think, the question is I always ask people when they write a new poem or they write a new song, like, what did you learn about yourself? And so I'm still in the debriefing with myself of what this book really meant for me, what I learned about myself. And I think part of it for me was still processing a little bit of grief, knowing that my father left this world not saying everything he had to say, not sharing himself quite as fully as he might have. And again, he lived a great life, but still. And then I start to get concerned, am I going to leave this world not saying everything I want to say? And do I want that for the other people in my life I love and care about? And even absolute strangers, like, why aren't we leaving behind or leaving some kind of testament to what was going on inside of us? Because we all have such a unique, specific voice in this world. There are 8 billion people on this planet, and no one's lived your life. No one's lived your life, your set of experiences in that quite this way, in this environment. And not only among the 8 billion who are on this planet, everyone who's ever come before then has never really lived your specific life, your experiences, read this exact same books you've read, had the same life experience you've had. And this gives you a brilliant, unique vantage point that I don't think we really own. That we are, all of us, worthy of a powerful story because we've all lived a unique experience in life. And so I want that. I really do have a yearning, I think, more than a want or a desire, really a yearning for people to express themselves more, what's going on inside of them. Because I think it'll create more connection for us on a global society. I believe that's what's possible out of it.
Okay. So tell me about that. Like, what's the link between knowing and sharing your unique voice and creativity and connection?
So it's like this. It's, you and I grew up on 2 different sides of the globe, right? We have a lot of things that we can make a long list of the things in which way we are not alike, right? But you and I can have a powerful connection and fall in love with the same song. And me in Southern California could be turning it up and singing it at the top of my lungs, and you in Australia turn it up and sing it at the top of your lungs. And suddenly we're not so different because we both listen to the song and say, that's my life. This is my experience. And that's what creativity brings to us. And not only does that happen for us with someone else's work, it could happen for each other with our own work. I could share with you a poem I wrote. You can share with me something you've made or created, and I can see myself in your work, and you can see yourself in my work. And it makes the world a little bit smaller place anytime we do that and share our authentic expression. I do believe, and it sounds very lofty anytime I say this, that authentic expression is the first stepping stone to world peace, or at least a somewhat more peaceful world, because we've truly felt seen and known. When you share yourself and somebody says, I get that, I see you, that creates more connection. And so much of why we don't feel connected in this world and feel so isolated is because we're not really sharing our authentic who we are. We tend to just share the opinions of our parents and our teachers, or something we heard on the news or somebody posted on social media, and we share ourselves at that level, not necessarily what's really going on inside of us. And it takes time to find out what's really going on inside of us. And there's a really great example I can give you of Carlos Santana. I once heard him, the guitarist Carlos Santana. I heard him once in a radio interview. He says, to this day, anytime he picks up the guitar, even after 50 years of playing guitar, he picks up the guitar and he starts playing, and he hears like, oh, that little riff I just played, it sounds like Miles Davis. And he says, oh, that thing I just played, it sounds like Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top. And he just keeps playing. And at some point he says, ah, there I am. And his own voice and his own specific tone and manner comes through. But he says, even to this day, everything starts out as almost like imitation or emulation, you know? And so that's where we start with when we start engaging with our creativity. We just kind of just start emulating the world around us. But if you keep engaging with it and consistently do that, you drop into your own voice, and there's something profound there. I guarantee it, for everyone, if they're willing to go there and engage with it. So that's why I think when we share ourselves, it does create more connection between us and more peace ultimately.
Yeah. So there's like these different levels of creativity where you're first imitating or copying or being inspired by, and then further on you get a greater understanding of your own creative spirit and can create on a deeper level. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, definitely. I think it always starts out like that. You start out with like anything, even when you're like drawing as like a kid, you're usually you're coloring in somebody else's picture, right? And you're just coloring it in. And at some point you start drawing pictures yourself. And that sometimes you're using tracing and you're drawing in the style of someone who you admire. It's the same with all expression. But at some point you drop into your own voice if you stick with it. And it takes time. But it'll happen. You know, when I first started learning to play guitar, people would ask me how it's going, and I'd say good, but it wasn't really good. I was really frustrated with that guitar. It was not behaving. It was not cooperating. I did not sound like Jimi Hendrix, in which I thought I ought to after the first 3 weeks. No, it took me like many months and months, and maybe even a year, where I no longer was putting down the guitar in frustration. And I don't even know, it's such a subtle shift that happened for me. It's at some point I put down the guitar after practicing and I felt better. I didn't put it down in frustration. I felt like I was able to release something. I felt like whatever teenage angst was inside of me, I was able to let some of that go. And that's when the guitar and that creative outlet became really, really special to me, really important to me. It actually got me through my angsty teenage years and a lot of emotional stuff I was keeping bottled up and didn't know how to say. It came out through that instrument, and I was so grateful for it. But it started out just trying to play the riff the way Jimmy Page played it and getting mad about it. But at some point, I just started writing my own stuff. You just start jamming. You find your jam, you know?
Yeah. So is that, you mentioned before, honoring your creative expression. Is that what you mean by that, by being kind to yourself when you're not quite nailing it and you're still learning? Is that what you mean by honoring it?
Yeah, well, there's two pieces to honoring it. That's a great question. So there's two pieces, I think. The first piece is just the willingness to give time to it. We get so caught up in our adult lives. We even refer to it here in the States, I don't know if you have the same expression, as adulting. The idea of me taking care of my phone bill and me, figuring out how to put all my bills on auto pay and the to-do list adulting of life, hashtag adulting, right? And this is like what we do in life. We get ourselves so caught up in the to-do list. And we say, like, we wake up in the morning and we'll say, tonight, I'm going to journal for a little bit. I'm going to work on that poetry collection I'm working on, or I'm going to work on this song. And then we go through the whole to-do list of our day. And by the time we get to the evening and finally get dinner ready and, feed the kids or whatever we're doing, and then we're at the end of the day and we have no capacity or vitality left for the thing, that we really wanted to do. And so the first piece of honoring your creativity is just really like booking that time with yourself, making it as important as getting the groceries done or getting the laundry done. Put in my own creative time is absolutely that important, if not more important. And to relate to it that way, that's what honoring it. That's the first step of honoring it. The second step, though, is once you get there to the creative time you're booking for yourself, is to be gentle with yourself, is to understand that the only way to grow at this is to fail. That's, unfortunately, I wish there was another way. I really do. But you want to just give yourself permission to, as Neil Gaiman says, make glorious mistakes. Like, just engage with it without any opinion. Just be you can start crafting it and look at it later. Put on the editor's hat and decide, I don't need that sentence, or I don't need that line. That's later. But kick the editor out of the room for now. Kick the self-judgment out of the room and just let yourself play. Because at the end of the day, it is all play. even when it's cathartic and you're moving through something that's bringing you to tears, give yourself the space to do that. Play, feel, just engage with it. That's honoring it. And so the first part is really just booking the time and honoring it within your life and your schedule. And the second piece is just being gentle with yourself and giving yourself permission to feel. I always say you want to either, until you ugly cry or let your freak flag fly, you're not there yet. So that's what it's about. You want to just get one of those things happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Great.
So if people go through the process of, finding their unique voice and starting to actually honor their creative expression, what impact does that have on their life? Like, what changes do you think they will start to be seeing?
Here's the fundamental thing that I think is important to note is that, I come from a world of, for many years, I've consulted in kind of the natural healing world and alternative medicine. I've done a lot of work writing mission statements and copy for that in that world. And so it's taught me a great deal about the human body. And I think so much of Western medicine tends to engage with the notion that if you have some kind of physical symptom, there must be a physical cause. But I think Eastern philosophy really understands that your current physical health is really a combination of all the things you're doing physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. All of those things are giving you your current level of health. And so you may even know someone who's, physically doesn't treat themselves well and is living a really long life. There are people who can make it to 100 who, smoke and drink alcohol and, eat steak 5 nights a week. And okay, great. But I've never seen anybody stress themselves out to 100. The emotional impact, I think, is almost more profound on the physical body than even physically what you do to your physical body, for the impact on your longevity and your overall level of health. And there's this sense that inside your creativity is the opportunity to really process some of your emotions, your mental state, what's really going on with your subconscious. I can't tell you how many times I've read back lyrics to a song and thought, oh, that's what's going on with me. I didn't even know. I didn't even have the words to express it, but the lyrics really don't lie. It told me what was really happening, what I was really feeling, but didn't have the words to say. It let itself out in the song. And in this way, we can kind of heal that emotional and mental stress. And yes, that will absolutely have an impact on your physical body and your sense of well-being. And that really, by engaging in your creativity, if you do it consistently, you begin to become more comfortable in your own skin. And I think that's the journey all of us are on some levels, is becoming more comfortable and accepting of who we are and knowing ourselves. And creativity is, I think, one of the most powerful vehicles we have for discovering that, for being on that journey.
Beautiful. I love that. There's so many parts of that where I just need to sit and think about that. I'll have to listen back to this again soon. But I think that's just wonderful. And I do really think that there is such a link between creativity and your mental state. You mentioned freedom of expression. And I feel that with creativity is that it is like this freedom and this lightness for you just to, just get everything out. Yeah. And it can be in any which way, but as long as you're listening into that and allowing yourself to actually do it.
That's great. Yeah. But I will say, as I'm answering this, I'm realizing I'm about to contradict myself. There is one subtle pitfall here. Because people, you can utilize your creativity only to beat yourself up more. This isn't any good. This is garbage. Why is that person having success when I'm not? All the pitfalls of comparison and self-loathing. And the idea of, when I talk about being gentle with yourself, it really is coming down to giving yourself permission to, be gentle with yourself and not necessarily get into those places of comparison or utilizing your creativity to maybe further beat yourself up to say, oh, this is further proof that I'm no good at anything. This is not what your creativity wants with you. This is not why your creative spirit wants you to engage with it. It wants to actually lift you up, I believe. That to be in that space where you feel lifted and it's a cathartic experience, where you feel like you've gotten a weight off of you by letting this out. I always say, Sometimes you will feel the weight on your of the world on your shoulders. But once it's out of you, it's only about as heavy as a book or as light as a song. That's what it really is in reality. It feels like the weight of the world when it's inside of you. But if you let it out, it's not that heavy as a book.
Yeah.
And the secret, though, is to not get down on yourself about or in comparison around the worthiness of your creativity. Know that you have a unique voice, and that unique voice is worthy no matter what. And it has nothing to do with how sellable your creativity is. Like I said, it's not about content. It's not about commerce. It's just about creativity for creativity's sake. It's a beautiful thing if you're willing to engage with it and do it and make that time for yourself to discover more about what's really happening inside of you.
It's an interesting thing, the creativity is such a personal thing. And when you start to look outwards, that is where the comparison starts to come in, because you're starting to benchmark yourself against other people. How can you build like a creative community around you and stay within that realm of not comparing yourself, but in fact, encouraging each other?
That's really great. My wife and I moderate a once a month. It's happening actually this Thursday. A once a month kind of workshop get together called Storyworks here in town. We live in a small town. There's less than 10,000 people here, maybe 8,000 people. That's kind of small by American standards. But we have Storyworks, and we keep 15 slots open, and everybody gets 7 minutes to share whatever you're working on. And it doesn't have to be done. It's not about a performance. It's just, here's a poem I've been working on this week. Here's a song I'm working on. Here's a scene from the screenplay I'm writing. And you just get 7 minutes to share your work and get feedback on it. And it's become a really profound evening. Once a month, just getting together to share what we're up to. And it's beautiful that it's different, all kinds of different mediums and different things, poetry and songs and essays and some spoken word stories. People just get up and share stories from their lives, and it's always really powerful. It's always just a powerful evening, and always there are a number of things we end up witnessing that are absolutely unexpected. And it's not necessarily even about delivery. We give feedback afterwards, my wife and I, but it's never from a place of critique. I think that's the important thing, is actually what we've learned, because we've both been in classes where it's all about, breaking you down so I can build you up again. I said, but in Storyworks, we just understand that I'm just looking for the thing that moved me. And so that's what I speak to. That line in your poem, this line, I love this. Tell me more about where that line came from in your life. I think you should explore more of that. And I would encourage you to explore more of that in your life. That line, this stanza, that's brilliant. Talk about what we loved. And it's a fascinating thing that's happened over the course of the 2 years that we've been doing the Storyworks monthly events. Everyone's work has gotten better. Everyone's work has grown exponentially because they feel seen and known and safe to share. And they're getting feedback and invited to explore the area that really moved them, that we were moved by. Explore that area. And I've learned fundamentally that it isn't talent that moves the room. It's vulnerability and courage. That's what moves the room every time. And so I would love to see a model like Storyworks happening all over the world if it's possible. Just find people who are making stuff. They don't have to be making the same stuff as you. Find any creative person you know and say, let's meet. I want to hear what you're working on. You can listen to what I'm working on. And we're going to agree to not be critical of it. We're just going to focus on what moved us about it. If there's anything that moved us, find the thing that we can hang our hat on, that we enjoyed, truly enjoyed, and what touched us. And that will begin to continually foster more powerful work.
Yeah, it's like a switch between comparison and criticism to having people who are curious around you, who are curious about the work you're doing, and maybe can pose questions to you that you haven't even considered about aspects of your work.
That's great. This is the word my wife uses always. Stay curious. Get more curious. Get more curious in your own work. Get more curious about other people's work. Lean into it. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I very closely equate creativity and curiosity because I just think that without a curious mind, creativity is very hard to achieve.
That's true, and it's interesting because I think there's all kinds of aspects of life that are worth getting curious about, and if you can start there, what's sparking my curiosity right now? You can get creative. You can keep discovering and get creative, but that may be the first access point. I think it's a great thing you're bringing up is just the willingness to observe the world and get out into the world from a place of curiosity.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
more of that.
More of that.
More of that, please.
And I am sure that the people tuning in today will be curious about your book, Let It Out, which I think by the time this goes to air will be live and available.
Yes.
So tell us how can people get in touch with you, or how can they access your book?
Yeah. So, I mean, the simplest way, I think, there's on Amazon. The ebook is available now for pre-order. The book officially comes out, though, on September 18th. So we may be past that date by the time this airs, which is great. And then the paperback is available then, and the ebook's available. So either one via Amazon is probably the fastest, easiest way on an international level. But my email address is right on the last page of that book, though. So I do really, truly, I'm sincere when I say this. If you start making anything after reading the book, I do want to know about it. I love those kind of stories. So email me. Tell me what you're making. Tell me what you're up to. Tell me if it made a difference in your life in any way. I love those stories. And if it's not making a difference in your life, tell me why you think it's not working, and I will literally write back and give you some other suggestions. So yeah. So I'm not committed. So yeah, absolutely.
I'd love that. I love that. And I'll pop the links to all of that in our show notes so people can access it. And I've had a little read through of your book in the pre-order that you've given me, which is so exciting, and I can't wait to finish it off. But thank you so much for joining me today, Gregg, and just sharing all of that with me. It was a really wonderful conversation.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for just great questions and giving me space to share about it. I love talking about this stuff. So thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. My people. I know this is my people.
I love it.
And I also want to thank my other people, which is actually everyone who's tuned in to Creativity Uncovered today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, or jump on and give us a rating or review, or get in touch with either of us about like how it's impacted you. Sharing the podcast is just going to help us, make the world a bit more of a creative space. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, take care. If you've made it this far, a huge thank you for your support and tuning into today's episode. Creativity Uncovered has been lovingly recorded on the land of the Cubby Cubby people, and we pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging. This podcast has been produced by my amazing team here at Crisp Communications, and the music you just heard was composed by James Gatling. If you liked this episode, please do share it around and help us on our mission to unlock more creativity in this world. You can also hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episode releases.